Okay. So colleagues, Rose and I are ready. We were ready for any eventuality, and we have prepared something quite interesting that we'd like to share with you, and it's on pedagogy, how you are going to teach. And so, Rose, are you with me, dear?
Yes, I'm here.
So I will share the presentation. Okay, there we go. So Zarina and Rose welcomes you to inquiry-based teaching and learning. And we'll share what we... Thank you, Rose. So there we are, the two of us, the two amigos.
Yeah.
Muted myself again. Okay. So thinking about inquiry-based, we wanted to identify aspects of the inquiry-based learning cycle, implementing inquiry-based learning in lessons, and how does inquiry-based teaching and learning link up with the 21st century skills. Um, so our journey, or the journey of the PSP along the inquiry-based uh, um, pathway started with a lot of our work earlier on, Rose, if you take back 20, 30 years, there were elements of inquiry based, but wasn't named as such. Am I correct?
Yes, but I think it's become more formalized recently with the research that has been done on how children learn by people observing children, putting them through little activities and tests, and also from a neuroscience to actually look at children's brains and people's brains, which they can do with imaging now, and actually getting an insight, more of an insight into how children learn, and that the brain is very plastic and can do a lot more than we had expected of children in the past.
Yes, so it's as we research and we understand more about how children learn, so our pedagogy also evolves. And it is in about 2017 that we were invited to a conference where we learned about the Laman Alapat program. And we were invited by the Laman Alapat Foundation, which is based in France, um, to experience, not to just learn the theory, but to experience their work and to observe in schools how it's implemented. And the whole ambition of the program is to make a contribution towards improving primary science teaching and learning. And this work was supported and encouraged and sponsored by Nobel laureates for physics in 1992. They were three scientists, and they were interested in physics, and they joined the French Academy with the French Academy of Sciences to promote this movement of inquiry-based teaching, which they named La Main à la Pâte, which is the hand in the dough.
Which means that the children must get their hands on whatever they're working with.
And so when we came back to South Africa, we decided, well, it's not a matter of copy and paste. Let's see what other countries are doing about inquiry-based teaching and learning. And we observed that the methodology was implemented in Chicago, the US, many years before then. And that is what the three scientists went to observe in the US before they brought it back to France and adapted the process. The English also decided to follow or implement the methodology, but they called it inquiry-based science, and not inquiry-based science. Then we also had on the other side of the world, the Australians were keen to get engaged with it and to renovate it into a process which they term the 5E process. Each E stands for processes of explaining, exploration, examining, elaborating, extending. So they looked at the process and then converted it into a sort of a process that they invented. Maybe that's the case. Okay. And then for South Africa, we have inquiry-based teaching and learning mentioned in the curriculum. Hey, Rose.
Yes, that's right.
But the problem is it's not a methodology that's widespread or understood widespread. That is why teachers can read the curriculum and they can see it mentioned there, but there isn't that theory to back it, and there isn't that practice to implement it. But what we do know is that inquiry-based teaching and learning is helpful for children because it connects up with how children learn, how children constantly ask questions, how they learn through their senses, how they learn through play, how they copy and model us, how they socialize, the way even that they use technology. So the plasticity that Rose referenced early means that the children can learn very quickly, they can adapt quickly, they can make adjustments, they can go in different directions. They ask a variety of questions like, why do fish swim in water? How do fish breathe? Rose, I was running a course 2 weekends ago with parents, grade 1 parents and their children, on how they can support their children at home with learning maths. So I had a variety of maths activities all stacked and packed, and then the rotation of parents from one activity to another and explaining the activity. And then they got the opportunity to do the activity with their children and to ask their children questions with my guidance. At the end of the hour session, I asked the customary, are there any questions from the floor, from parents or so, expecting parents to be curious and asking questions. But one of the little grade 1 girlies puts up her hand and she says, where do numbers come from? So the parents, were quite taken aback. The child's been learning the whole time about numbers and reading numbers and writing numbers and counting numbers. And this was her question at grade 1 level. So it shows the potential for children that they will ask questions.
And be curious.
They can be curious, yes. Rose, every time I print the next slide, then the sound goes. So just remind me. Eh?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, I want to go to the next one. So we are keen on inquiry based not for its sake, but for what can be achieved through it. That it promotes curiosity, it promotes critical thinking, active exploration, thoughtful questioning, communication, creativity, and a deep understanding of what am I actually learning and why am I learning it. So that is always an issue with children, is that why am I learning this? How useful is this going to be for me? Why do I have to be put through this agony in the classroom? But if we change the process around and make it more engaging, allowing them to question, understand, and be aware of how their knowledge is improving and the usefulness of that knowledge, and it contributes to them taking agency of their own learning and becoming self-directed learners. Would you agree, Rose?
Yes, yes, very much so.
So what we have here, colleagues, is PSP embraced inquiry-based. So the problem with inquiry-based pedagogy, as advocated by the French Foundation, La Main à la Pâte, is that it doesn't have a curriculum. The curriculum develops along the interests of the children, whereas in South Africa, we have a curriculum. So we were stumped. Do we now abandon this very useful pedagogy, or how can we adapt this to our needs? And that is what we did. We examined our processes, and that is how the following evolved. We said, let the child experience or do something. That means that their learning is hands-on. You start with an object. Rose, you want to add?
Yes, I think where this also comes from is that because the scientists were involved, they actually wanted in inquiry based to model how scientists actually work. So scientists don't just sit in their offices and read papers. What they
Hmm.
do is they look at a problem, or they find a problem, or they find an interesting question, and then they actually go and do something physical. They measure something, they observe it, they go and investigate the real thing, and they question and think about it, they talk and read and write about it, and most scientists enjoy what they're doing. So this is actually modeling how science actually happens, instead of um, just reading about it in a textbook, or um,
Or
just
another,
repeating,
yeah.
repeating how an experiment was done. This
Mm.
is about children actually engaging with real things that have been purposefully set up for them so that they can operate like little scientists. And in that way, they internalize the knowledge and the experience.
So through our work, we developed this methodology that we share with teachers to say children learn best when they experience and do hands-on, when they question and think minds on, when they talk, read, and write about something, words on. So the words on consolidates their learning. And when we see children having fun, their hearts are in the process. They are interested, they are motivated. We see a difference in their level of learning. And that is how we birthed the hands on, minds on, words on, hearts on PSP methodology, which we argue integrates essential elements of the inquiry based approach. Uh, okay. So inquiry based teaching, we noticed and observed key attributes. And these key attributes are that children learn through asking questions. They are stimulated by inquiry. They are stimulated by their curiosity, as advocated or shared by John Dewey. He says children are stimulated when they are curious and they ask questions. It is learner-centered, which doesn't exclude the teacher, but the learning is focused on the child and the teacher has a guiding role. It involves self-directed learning. The child knows what they are learning and why they are learning something. And it involves the whole child actively in participating, listening, questioning, drawing, reading, writing, and those kinds of activities help or contribute to children learning. Inquiry-based builds on children's curiosity. That is the the starting point we want to use, because we agree with John Dewey that the child's curiosity plays an essential part in this process. So, using the methodology of inquiry-based, we formulated our own methodology that integrates aspects of the inquiry-based, and now we structured into a classroom methodology. How could we take this using the South African curriculum, but still achieve the objectives of inquiry-based teaching and learning? So we start with a child's curiosity, we develop it into a physical experience, and we engage their intellect. So we've demarcated clear events that we are going to demonstrate now how it could happen in a lesson.
So can I also just talk about why we talk about creating experiences for children? A good friend of mine who has been teaching for many years said the only difference between children and himself is that they do not have as much experience as he has. And so what we're putting before children is we are creating purposeful experiences that demonstrate some kind of a science concept or science skill that the child can master within that activity. And so these activities have to be very purposeful. They have to be doable for children, and they have to be very hands-on. And the activity does the work by helping children to actually, the activity is such that in a way the activity does the work, not the teacher, and the child who is going through that experience is engaging with that particular experience and internalizing it.
Thank you, Rose. So we're going to start with that. You sometimes we underestimate the child's natural curiosity, and most of the time we underestimate the children's prior knowledge. We imagine that we have to present the knowledge to them, and they have no clue, and they don't understand. And so, from that minimalist point, we now want to build something all over again. So the crucial thing for a teacher is to start with what children do know. And that guides you into how the pathway that you are going to take with them. So we can give them objects, and we can ask questions, or we can show a series of pictures, or we can tell a story, or we can use a drama role play to start to ignite the child's curiosity. And now we are walking this path. Or listen to their ideas and suggestions and give feedback. Or we ask open-ended questions. But the important thing is for us as teachers to create that environment where the child feels secure and safe enough to ask these questions and share their feelings about things. For me, it is incredibly important that children are allowed to ask questions. So another way is to use the KWL chart. This way, you can start with for the junior primary. What do you know about the 4 seasons? So you could get very minimal information coming from this group, say when it's warm and when it's cold, when the leaves fall from the tree or new things start growing, and we can name those seasons. And then we ask, so what would we want to know about the 4 seasons, how long the seasons are, um, are they affected by different temperatures? Would I require different sets of clothing for the seasons? And after I have presented the lesson, a wonderful conclusion would be, so now that you have experienced the lesson about the seasons, how long are the seasons? And what have you learned about the seasons? And are the seasons the same in the northern hemisphere as well as in the southern hemisphere? So there's a lot one can do with a KWL chart. Or we can use a mind map and start with seasons and ask the learner, so what do you know about the seasons? And insert the answers that they give into the spaces that we have provided. The more senior classes in the primary school can fill in the what they know themselves, and for the juniors, grade ones or grade R, teacher can write in for them. I find mind maps is a very useful tool for summarizing information and not looking at rows and notes of pages, pages of notes that can be quite dulling. Hey, Rose. And
Yeah.
so I make a mind map, and you can color your mind maps, and you can insert pictures that explain things into your mind map. And children love this way of compiling or summarizing their notes. And then especially these pictures that are there, or they draw, that's what they thoroughly enjoy. Then also, from using this in the foundation phase or intermediate phase, you give them something and you ask, after you've examined it very carefully, what do you see? Where they write about it or they draw about it, okay? And then, so I've given that thing to you for a reason, and I want you to think about it. So what do you think about it? And what questions do you have? So I hope you've watched this process of ours now. We consistently we are asking children what questions they have, not saying to them, this is the question, give the answer. That is more of we're conditioning them to repeat the information or the answer. But the invitation to ask, I'm giving you something, I'm asking you to think about it, and I'm asking you what questions you have about the thing I've given you. In the senior primary and the senior phase in high school, you can expand this chart to include, I think, I wonder, you know what, this was confirmed what I believed from the start. I believe I didn't quite understand this aspect, and this is the new information I have gained after I have conducted the investigation. So in this way, this forms a summary note that the child is compiling, him or herself, confirming what they know already, or they believed, or they estimated, and then identifying misconceptions they had and correcting themselves. That is the most powerful kind of learning. Would you agree, Rose?
Yeah, I think this helps. We're asking children for their thought, what they observe, their thoughts about something. So they are engaged in their own thinking here, and
Mm.
they're not just receiving somebody else's thoughts and thinking.
In sort of a second-hand way of
Yes, yes,
developing the information.
yes.
So let us look at how would this look like in the classroom. So I'm starting the lesson, and the lesson is on the cow. So we use the what questions. What do you see? What or who? When do you think this was taken? Where was it taken? This picture of this cow. Okay. How and why and what if become the essential questions that we ask. These are low level and these are higher order questions. And this young lady says, why is a cow called a cow? Which is a very good question. Who decided on the word cow? How did that come about? Children ask such wonderful, strange questions. And I'm just thinking, what made her ask this kind of question? What was she thinking about?
You are muted, sorry.
Sorry, when I change slides and it goes to, it mutes me. So we've I just want to go back quickly. Um, is we ask the questions and then we think about creating the experience. I'm amazed when we walk in classes and the lesson doesn't have one picture. You know, for some of us, pictures are the mainstay because I have to show what I'm teaching about. And here we're talking about cows. So I need to have a picture of a cow. And I speak about, so what do cows eat? Hey, Rose, what do, and
Yes,
just checking with children, okay?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think also those question roots, the
Mm-hmm.
W words there are the sort of question roots. Um, the children can ask those questions as well. So who looks after this cow? What do we get from a cow?
Mm-hmm.
They will have their questions, even if they can't write them. Sometimes they can articulate them, especially if the
Yes.
stimulus is there, the stimulus of the picture of the cow. They can begin to work in groups and formulate some of those questions themselves. They don't necessarily have to write them if they're very young,
Mm-hmm.
but they
Mm-hmm.
can talk about them, and that way they are already warmed up to the activity that you're going to do.
Yes. And we can bring in objects associated with cows that children are familiar with. Dairy products, milk, cheese, butter, okay? And then where did this come from? And how did, because you get interesting
Mm,
responses to that
mm.
question.
How does a cow make milk?
Yes, it's an amazing process. And then we can act out, or we can tell a story, or we can look at more pictures showing different kinds of cows.
And
The
we could
next,
show somebody milking a cow, and then get children to mimic that as well. How do you milk a cow? And where you so they get an idea that the milk comes from the udder, and the cow has to be milked, and or could be milked by a machine as well. So there are all kinds of things to explore there.
and here you could also have a video of cows being milked if
Mm,
you just to that. I mean, there are so many videos on the internet that are
mm,
freely available. You can show cows in the fields, or being herded, so that is available. And so look how you're building layers and layers of
mm,
experiences into the process. So now you can extend the child's experience and by providing additional or more
mm,
information. The cow's brain is used for making anti-aging cream and certain types of medicines. That
Who would have
chewing gum.
thought? Who would have
Yes,
thought? Yeah.
you know, that chewing gum that you chewing could be made from the fat of the cow. Um, uh, some of the milk is used to make plastics. I made plastic with my grade 6 learners to show how it could be made. And they were totally excited to actually make their own piece of plastic using milk. The internal organs of a cow is used to make tennis racket strings or vitamins or medical material. The bones are refined to make charcoal and fertilizers. And what part of the grass is made from a cow? Good
Mm.
heavens, there's so many things that come from a cow. And imagine the children's excitement to learn all this. The next step, starting with children's curiosity, we gave them experiences, we extended them by providing additional information, and now we take that opportunity to help the child make connections with the real world. Here, through stories, through research, through reading, through interpreting cards of animals and posters, through looking at humane treatment of the animal, to looking at illnesses and diseases associated with cows. Something we should be taking note of is the spread of the foot and mouth disease.
Mm.
What is the foot and mouth disease and how does it affect the animal? And is the meat safe to be consumed? What about mad cow disease? What does that look like? So we can find out more useful relationships between the animals and man or people. We know cows are used in the American rodeos, and they're ridden. And in Spain, what do they do in Spain with the bulls, Rose? Remind me
Bullfighting,
again.
yes. I hope they don't do much of that, but yes, that's what used to happen, I think. But I also read somewhere that cows it's very relaxing for people to be near cows. And people who have problems with anxiety can go and be in a field with a very gentle cow and just be in the same vicinity as the cow. And that calms people down. So isn't that interesting?
And and that's so interesting, Rose, because I think it's I stand corrected, but somewhere in Europe they play music to the cows and they brush the cows regularly and keep them clean and they treat
Mm,
the cows with kid gloves and it does affect the quality of product that is
mm,
produced.
mm,
So it shows you how you treat your domesticated animals does affect their quality of life as well as yours. And then an interesting question is, is the difference between beef cattle and dairy cattle? Are they the same? Are they different? What is the difference? You know? So through the learning from the going from the cow to now building on the levels of the starting with the curiosity, creating the experience, extending the knowledge and making connections of the real world, we feel that the PSP's methodology of hands on, minds on, words on, hearts on, as well as this tiered level of support will allow you to integrate aspects of inquiry based in a doable manner. Would you say, Rose?
Yeah, and I think one of the things about creating these layers is you're starting with something that children know about and with their interest and curiosity, but each layer gives them deeper and deeper and deeper knowledge. So we wouldn't just stop where we've looked at milk products and said, let's have a look. What's this? This is yogurt. This is cheese. This is milk. This is butter. This is cream. We wouldn't just stop there. We would then extend that a bit further to improve, well, to deepen their experience. So now they've experienced these things. So that's when you start going into, so what other products do we get from a cow? And then how do we treat cows? And why is it important to treat cows well? because our meat comes from it and our milk comes from it. And so you're deepening their knowledge. And that's what is the purpose, is not just an activity that stops at a certain level where the children have done the activity. Well, so what? How do you now embed that activity into deeper knowledge? And so that's one of the purposes of this, is that you build up this scaffolding of layers and layers and layers, which get more and more complex as you go from each layer to the next. And that is known as scaffolding, and it's also is what deepens children's knowledge.
And so the whole process, remember, of starting with the child's curiosity, creating the experience, extending their knowledge, and connecting to the real world can also fit into the inquiry-based teaching and learning cycle, which includes questioning, as you see my colleague Nadima starting on the right-hand side, then giving children the apparatus to allow them to investigate and explore, and then to talk, share, discuss as you reflect on what you've learned, and to record that accurately. This is not a sequential process. You can start anywhere in this. You could be exploring something and then decide, well, I wonder what this is, and I wonder, and then the questioning comes in. So it is presented and this, but it can also depend on what you learned, what you're finding out, what you sharing in the discussion, what you're finding out from your colleagues and your peers, to then maybe move over to a question or investigation. So the idea of just presenting is that these are the essential components you'll find in inquiry-based presentation. So then you ask, what is the role of the teacher? Of the teacher in this whole process is very crucial in setting up these activities. So the teacher is intended to create the environment where the child feels safe and secure to ask questions. The teacher sets up the activities, and I think it's Albert Einstein who says, I don't teach my learners, I create the environment in which they learn. That quote is attributed to Einstein, but I'm not sure that, it's actually there. Maybe somebody just wanted to land it more positively by saying it was mentioned by Albert Einstein. Never mind. We're not going to dispute it in this session. Okay, and then the teacher needs to guide and see that the children's understanding is following the logical path. And if it's deviating too much from the path, for the teacher to gently steer the children back to the pathway, and to support their agency, their development of confidence and pride in their own work. Another way of setting it up is to look at the pedagogical model, the simplified inquiry cycle, which contains we see, we explore, we share our thinking, we reflect, and we act. As long as we've integrated important aspects that add value to a child's learning experience and enriches a child's learning experience, and it provides authentic integration and it's a natural fit. It's not artificial. It's not inquiry if the child is supposed to get a definite set of results. If the give me an example. Can you think of a cover example, Rose? If the light bulb must light up because I'm connecting it in this way, and it doesn't light up, then okay, that doesn't work. The teacher's not really telling the truth or explaining it properly.
Yeah.
And so I'm not learning from that experience.
I think an example would be one way to teach that has traditionally been taught to learners is the teacher gets up, maybe draws a circuit on the board, puts some labels to it, an electric circuit, and then explains how it works. And the children sit there passively, and they then copy it into their books and they memorize it. That's not inquiry based because the children are not active. If the teacher puts children in groups and gives them each the little components to make a little light bulb light up, which many of our teachers have done. Most of you have been to PSP, have done this with children. It's quite possible for children to do that. If it doesn't work, the teacher's not going to revert to an explanation straight away or on the board. What she's going to do is go to the group and say, I wonder why it doesn't work. Could it be the battery is flat? Could it be that the light bulb is not working? Could it be that we haven't connected it properly? And in that way, you are facilitating a proper inquiry. If at the end they can't get it to light up, you go to another group and you say, they've managed to get it to light up. Let them show you how they did it. And only afterwards would you then expect them to draw a circuit. And there you might help the children by saying, you draw a light bulb like this, and you draw a switch like this, and you draw a battery like that. And helps them with some terminology so that they can, with a word list, so they can use those words to label their diagram. But do you see what I mean? Is that the teacher has to be invested in the inquiry process. The teacher, and we often see this, and we've done it ourselves, is you think, oh, the children are not learning this fast enough. Let me just go to the board and I'll do it on the board for them. Sometimes you have to do that, but 90% of the time you don't have to do that. If you've got a good activity going, explore the activity as far as you can take it with the children.
So that the learning develops.
Yes. Yeah. So that is the work of the teacher. So it's not the teacher standing up with 45 minutes of notes that she's going to write on the board for the children. That is not proper teaching work.
And the teacher shouldn't be working harder than the children.
Yeah.
It's the children learning. The teacher is the guide. The teacher is the pointing along the pathway. The teacher, if the teacher sees the children deviate too much, gently bring them back. Okay,
and the hard work that the teacher is doing is not happening necessarily in the classroom. It's happening in the teacher's preparation. So that is where the teacher's main work is, to actually prepare the lessons very well, have enough equipment for the children, use everyday things if you can, find a good activity that will engage the children, decide what terminology they need, little word lists that they need, decide how you're going to find out whether they know, whether they've learned what you wanted them to learn. And you can do that with shared writing at the end, or you can do a mind map and children can tell you what they think they've learned. But that is really the main work of the teacher, is anticipating how children are going to engage with an activity. And for that, you have to try out the activity yourself and then scaffold it by having a good introduction, a good discussion with the children, then giving them the activity, then guiding them through the activity by getting them to keep inquiring until you get to a point where most children feel satisfied that they've learned something. And then you, so that is your work in the class, but the hard work comes in actually doing your preparation.
And once you do that setup, children will follow that lead. The 5E model, as we explained, which was remodeled or reinvented or recreated in Australia, it does exactly the same thing, even though they use different words here. So they've used engage, what happened, why did it happen, What can I do to find out? Okay, exploring the topic, making predictions, estimating, recording your ideas and asking questions. Number 3, explaining what happened. What did you notice? What did you observe? What did you understand? How do you assess your own understanding? Extending, you see that process again of extending, asking new questions, drawing other conclusions, going into a different direction. Okay. And that's the next level after I've learned a specific thing. And then evaluating, demonstrate your understanding of what you have learned and how you plan to show that. And then, for interest's sake, somebody's extended the 5E model into a 7E model by adding the process of eliciting knowledge. What do the children know? And then extending the knowledge using a different word. So I thought just to extend that for you. You can research that further. So 21st, the inquiry-based methodology contributes to the 21st century skills. How does it do that? By promoting collaboration, teamwork, working together, small group work, sharing talents, sharing expertise, sharing what we know, communicating once you know, sharing what you know with others, asking more questions and finding solutions, being creative, trying new approaches, trying a different route, critical thinking, looking at problems in a new way, and linking across subjects and disciplines. So we feel and we make a strong argument for the fact that inquiry-based methodology can contribute to the development of the 21st century skills. And we do argue, Rose and I come out quite strongly and say inquiry-based can help engage your learners, interest them in learning, motivate their involvement and their understanding. Their knowledge becomes personal knowledge. It becomes knowledge that is developing their sensory and motor skills in context. It develops their sense of pride and achievement and their confidence in, I know, and I know what I know, and I know how important this knowledge is that I have for my life and the world around me. So we do get naysayers. We do get those who argue against us, hey, Rose?
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
how, yes, carry on, Rose?
Yes, I think a lot of teachers say, but we haven't got, our classes are too big, but you can work in pairs. That we haven't got enough equipment, but you can use everyday things. You can make patterns with paper. You can make you can use paper cups instead of beakers. You can use a candle instead of a Bunsen burner to do certain things. So they're lot, and you can use glass jars to put things in, and you can put an egg in vinegar and see what happens. That's a little bit of homework for you. Put a raw egg into vinegar and see what happens. And you can tell us later on what happens after a day or two if you want to. Anyway, the thing is that we have, if we are really concerned about children, we have to make every effort to be very well prepared. Get help if you need help. You can get help from PSP and other organizations if you are struggling to get materials or to work out how you're going to do it with a big class of children. But as I was saying, the preparation is the hard work. Once you've got everything prepared and you've got a few things in an ice cream container, a few little things in an ice cream container that you can put in front of the children and say, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you think about this? Why is it important to know about this? What do you know about this stone? Why is it round? And why is this other stone not round? What could have happened to it? You see what I mean? So you can use very, very simple, everyday things that you can find and go through a process like this and try it with 1 or 2 lessons. You don't have to start with doing it in every lesson. You can start doing this once or twice a week with a class, experiment with it. You do have to train the children, and you say, well, we're going to do something interesting today. If you're all going to climb the walls, we'll stop doing it and we'll talk about how we should behave, and then we'll try again tomorrow, and I'll have something interesting for you to do. So sometimes it might take 6 weeks to train children into this process. So it's a process. It isn't an event that happens once and then you say, well, it doesn't work, so we're never going to do it again.
And that is, you're speaking to the heart of teachers' fears, that children will get out of hand, that they will be noisy, that they will be hanging from the chandeliers, that the whole school will know yours is the one that's making the most noise, that they're hard to manage. And teachers question, do they know when they are successful in achieving the objective? So that kind of learning needs to be made explicit by the teacher to say, if we're using the world, what are we learning today? We're going to learn about cows today. We're going to learn how important cows are for our life, how they don't literally help us, but we acquire products from cows and we use the material from cows in different ways. So unless we're going to make it explicit, the children most certainly wouldn't know when they're successful in their learning, but it's the teacher needs to guide that process. And yes, if they talk, it is something that you can alert your neighboring teachers to say, my class is doing a discussion today. We will certainly try not to be as noisy, or you take them out to a part of the school where they're far from others, and now they can engage in the discussion if need be, or we can train them in the class how to use the inner voice or the quiet voice when they are talking, so that they're not disrupting other classes. The problem with the French approach, the La Main à la Pâte program, which I said does not have a curriculum but works with the interests of the children, is that you cannot have standardized tests for different areas or different provinces in the country, because the children will be guided by their own interests, remember, and they wouldn't have learned the same thing. So you wouldn't be able to establish the understanding of what is the level of learning in the country. And
that's a bit far out for us, isn't it? It's not actually appropriate for our country, where we don't have the kind of support that you might get, say, from an Academy of Sciences, to actually do that kind of very open-ended experimental curriculum that follows what the children's interests are.
yes.
That's a very sophisticated model.
Yes. So, but that doesn't stop us from integrating essential elements to help our children develop the skills associated with inquiry-based learning.
Absolutely.
So in the true sense of inquiry-based learning, we invite questions from the group.
Or any comments? I know some people like Amy maybe have tried some of it.
I have tried quite a few, and thanks to PSP's wonderful books that you can purchase from them, there are many different ways that you can involve the children and get them curious and excited for science. a lot of children hated science, and when they leave my class at the end of the year, they're loving it and they can't wait to learn more or go into more detail, because in grade 5 it's very surface, the information that they get. So they're excited to learn more. And in term 3, the children are learning about electricity, and you mentioned doing role play. And I have done role play with my learners, and I have seen how they were able to learn the process in which we get electricity, from where it comes from, the source, how it is changed to get electricity in our homes. At the beginning, my children never understood a word of it. They couldn't remember it. After doing a simple role play activity, they were able to get a 7-mark question, full marks, 90% of the children, just because we did role play. So there definitely is benefits to being able to use it, and to be able to get the children active and involved in their own learning, rather than them just sitting and taking in what you say or what is on the board.
Thank you for that.
Can you see?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Can you hear?
We can hear as
Yes.
well.
This part of the video, I set out the different parts of the mains electricity system. So you have your power station, and then you have your generator and your substation and all that. So on each chair, there was the name of the step and then a picture of it. And then they had to, in order to get from one section to the next, they had to do a different movement. So that is what they are doing here.
Lovely.
And then I just consolidated with it, and the children had to tell me from step 1 all the way through to when we get to the homes. But this is a wonderful informal assessment where you can see whether or not the children understand the work. I did the exact same thing with having the learners role play what will happen when they communicate with the doctor, and the doctor tells them no, they possibly have TB. they had to tell the doctor what symptoms they had, and the doctor would then have to try and figure out what was going on. And I was able to see that the children still did not understand what TB is and the symptoms that come with TB, because some of them said that the lungs sit in your throat, and their throat, they don't say they cough a lot, but they sneeze a lot. So they don't. I was able to use role play as an informal assessment to get to see whether or not they understood the content and whether or not I should reteach it.
Thank you for sharing all of that.
Fascinating.
It is. And those children will
Yes.
never ever forget this also, because they were part of it all. Really. Yeah. Thank you, Amy.